Hello Year 11, this is Miss Saul, Head of English at King Alfred's Academy. I'm just putting together a short video for you to explain the features of an article for writing to express a viewpoint. As you may be aware from a previous video on features of a speech, this is one of three types of text that you are most likely to be asked to write in your exam for this question. So you could be asked to write a speech, an article, or a letter. So obviously we will look at the features of an article in this video, but there are also videos on the features of a letter and features of a speech. So as we've said before, in the exam, you will be given a question that looks very much like this. So you'll be given a statement, which in this case was, teachers are overworked and taken for granted. We need to start respecting the profession more if we hope to keep teachers in education. So you're given a statement and then you're asked to write a particular type of text and you're told who you're writing for. So in this case, we're writing an article. It's always worth taking note of what kind of text we're writing for a national newspaper in response to this statement. So we are writing formally because it's a national newspaper, and so therefore we're writing to a wide target audience, and therefore it is a professional piece of writing that needs to be written in a formal manner. Okay, so obviously what we would have done is we would have bugged the question. We're going to box what it's asking us to do. So in this case, to write an article, and what we're writing for, so underlining national newspaper. And then we would have also taken note of the statement, so what the claims are. So actually there's quite a few claims being made here. Teachers are overworked and taken for granted, so we need to decide whether we agree or whether we're going to argue against that. We need to start respecting the profession is another claim being made there before we lose teachers, basically, if we hope to keep teachers in education. So there's quite a few bits of that statement to address, whether you are going to agree with it and therefore prove it, or whether you're going to argue against it and explain why. Okay, so in this case, in the waggle that I have also put up for you, it supports this statement. It agrees with this statement. I'm hoping that you've managed to print off the waggle. If you haven't though, it will be on the screen. It just makes it slightly easier if you can annotate the waggle as we go. Okay, if not, making notes about the key features of an article. So this is on your knowledge organizer as well, but just pointing out the key features that often are used in articles that indicate clearly, in this case to your examiner, but to your reader in general, that you are writing an article. So we start with a clear title, which is underlined to indicate it is the title of the article, normally written in the present tense. So for instance, e.g., time to change the stereotypes surrounding young people. Okay, it doesn't have to be clever or like witty, but just quite straightforward and clear as to what your whole article is going to be about. And you'll see on the waggle in a minute the kind of title that person's gone with. It needs to be written in paragraphs, and obviously the ethos, logos, pathos structure with the conclusion helps you with that. So you have your 4 paragraphs by the end. And we will always be using that regardless of what kind of text you are writing. It often starts and or ends with a rhetorical question, basically to indicate what your article is probably going to be about. So for instance, are young people really the hooligans the media makes them out to be? I would argue not. Young people are. Okay, so you're indicating with a rhetorical question that you then direct the answer to show what your article is about. It can also have optional subheadings for each section or paragraph, indicating what each part is about. Often in articles you have sort of these indicators as subheadings to show that this paragraph is basically going to be on this topic. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that you pause here and take some notes about the main features of an article. Okay. So hopefully you've managed to print this waggle, but I have put it on the slides for you just in case. Before we start annotating the waggle though, I'm going to ask you to read it completely through once so you're familiar with what this article is about. Now, bear in mind, this is an article that's been written for the sake of the exam. It's not a real article, but it does demonstrate a lot of the skills that your exam is going to be asking you to demonstrate, and quite a lot of the skills that most real life articles demonstrate as well. So I'm going to ask you to pause and read I've put it across 2 slides for you. So pause this, read this. Once you're ready to click on, by all means do for the second half, and then I'll meet you back in a little while. Okay, so hopefully we have read the article through once, so we know what it's about. I'm going to now just talk you through the features that indicate it's an article, and you can make annotations on your copy of the Waggle, or just indicate on your list of features exactly where these examples are. Basically, you can jot these examples down as, like, for instance, a clear title underlined in the present tense. So this is an example of that. So if you don't have the Waggle to annotate, you can write down this title now and explain what it is. Okay, so tough demands on teachers. So clearly this article is going to be about teachers and sort of the tough situation that they're in. Okay, and then underneath that, straight underneath on the right hand side, normally we have the full date and the name of the author, and it's the full name as well. Okay, and you can make up the name, it doesn't have to be yours, although you may as well use your own name. It's absolutely fine, but it's quite a professional way of sort of indicating who's written this article. Okay, then it's written in paragraphs. Obviously this is the first paragraph, but there are 4 in total. It follows the ethos, logos, pathos conclusion structure. So as long as you're planning with that, which you should be, you'll always have your paragraph structure in place. Okay. And it often starts with a rhetorical question, so indicating the topic of the article. In this case, I'm clearly indicating that we're going to be talking about teachers. We all know some, don't we? We've at least all had some, and we probably are acquainted with some still. All right. So clearly, this is all going to be about teachers and what they're going through. And then finally, just as a note, articles can be written in first or third person, but it's often in first person, as this article is. So using pronouns like I, we, and us to directly address the reader. Okay, so just that might be worth making a note of as well. That quite commonly is written in first person, although it can be written in third. Okay, so that's the first paragraph. The second one then clearly demonstrates the optional choice of using subheadings for each part of your article. So it indicates overall what this section is about. So for instance, in my second section, my logos section, I've put, what does the profession look like across the country? So I'm clearly going to give you some evidence of the pressures that the teaching profession are under. Okay, so I'm using the subheadings to indicate what each paragraph is going to tell me. So for instance, in my third paragraph, I've got, what is the reality for teachers and what does this mean for the future? So again, as we know, with the pathos, we're painting an emotional picture of the future, why it's going to be terrible if we don't change anything, if we don't do what you're asking us to do, and why might it be better if we do. Okay, so I'm indicating that with my subheading, and likewise again with my conclusion, but what can be done? So obviously I'm going to now sort of push us forward to, so what do we need to do, basically? Okay, so this is the conclusion, and if you remember on the list of features of article, often we said it ends with a rhetorical question as well. It also gives you quite a nice cyclical, like circle structure to your writing. You started and ended with a rhetorical question. So you're getting a reader to consider your point. In this case, we are lucky to have these teachers. We need to value them a bit more. Okay. So those are the main features of an article. Obviously, in this article, as we would in any piece of writing to express a viewpoint writing, we've still got our mature viewpoint phrases, we've still got our theirs techniques, we've got some varied sentence structures, all of the general skills that we need to be demonstrating, regardless of whether we're writing an article, a letter, or a speech. But it's also important to know what you need to do to deliberately indicate that you're writing an article if that's what you're asked to write. So please make sure we're making notes. By all means, rewind and pause at any point that you need to make some more annotations. And then do join me for the video on features of a letter. Okay. Thanks very much, Year 11, and we'll see you again soon.